World War II, spanning from 1939 to 1945, was one of the most significant and devastating conflicts in world history. It involved many of the world's nations and was fought between two major alliances, the Allied powers and the Axis powers. Like a wildfire, the conflict spread across the globe, consuming the lives of millions and reshaping the geopolitical landscape forever. Let's delve into the key events that shaped this monumental period, exploring the causes, the battles, and the lasting consequences of this global conflict. Our story begins in the heart of Europe, in the nation of Poland. On September 1st, 1939, the German war machine under Adolf Hitler roared to life. Panzer divisions stormed across the Polish border, marking the beginning of World War II. Britain and France, bound by treaty to protect Poland's sovereignty, declared war on Germany. The delicate balance of peace, painstakingly negotiated after the horrors of the First World War, shattered. The Polish people fought back with courage and determination, but they were outmatched and outgunned. Warsaw endured weeks of relentless bombardment, its streets reduced to rubble. The invasion of Poland serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of unchecked aggression and the fragility of peace. With Poland crushed, Hitler turned his attention west towards France. The French, haunted by memories of the First World War, had constructed the Maginot Line, a seemingly impregnable defense. However, Hitler's generals bypassed the Maginot Line, striking through the dense Ardennes forest. The German attack, spearheaded by panzer divisions, was swift and brutal. French and British forces, caught off guard, were forced into a desperate retreat towards the English Channel. The evacuation of Dunkirk became a symbol of both British resilience and the dire situation facing France. Paris fell to the Nazis on June 14, 1940, marking a low point for the Allied cause. The fall of France demonstrated the awesome power of the German military and raised serious doubts about Britain's ability to stand alone against the Nazi tide. With France vanquished, Great Britain stood alone against the Nazi war machine. Hitler unleashed the Luftwaffe in a relentless bombing campaign against Britain. The Battle of Britain, fought in the skies above England, became a pivotal chapter in the war. Day after day, German bombers targeted British airfields, factories, and cities. The fate of Britain rested on the Royal Air Force and the young pilots who took to the skies in their Spitfire and Hurricane fighters. Outnumbered but not outmatched, these brave men and women fought with unwavering courage and skill. The RAF, aided by radar, fought with a ferocity that surprised the Luftwaffe. Against all odds, Britain prevailed, marking a turning point in the war and proving that Hitler's forces were not invincible. While the Battle of Britain raged, a conflict of even greater scale was brewing in the east. On June 22, 1941, Hitler unleashed Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. The German invasion force, the largest ever assembled, surged across the Soviet border. The initial German advance was swift and brutal, with panzer divisions carving deep into Soviet territory. The Red Army, although vast in numbers, was ill-prepared for the ferocity of the German blitzkrieg. Cities and towns across the Western Soviet Union fell in rapid succession. The invasion of the Soviet Union unleashed a new level of brutality into the war. Operation Barbarossa, initially envisioned as a swift campaign, would drag on for 4 long years, becoming a battle of attrition that would claim millions of lives. As the flames of war engulfed Europe, a new front was about to explode in the Pacific. On December 7, 1941, the Japanese launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, the US naval base in Hawaii. The attack aimed to cripple the US Pacific Fleet and buy Japan time to consolidate its gains in Southeast Asia. Japanese aircraft carriers approached Hawaii under a cloak of secrecy. At 7:55 a.m., wave after wave of Japanese fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes descended upon the American base. The attack on Pearl Harbor lasted for just under 2 hours, but the consequences were profound. The US Pacific Fleet lay in ruins, and over 2,400 Americans were killed or wounded. The United States, outraged by the attack, declared war on Japan, officially entering World War II on the side of the Allies. For years, the Allied forces had been planning and preparing for a massive invasion of Nazi-occupied France. The operation, codenamed Overlord, was the largest amphibious invasion in history. On June 6, 1944, the invasion force converged on the beaches of Normandy, France. As dawn broke, the Allied bombardment began, followed by the first wave of troops storming ashore. American, British, Canadian, and Free French forces faced a hail of machine gun fire and artillery shells. Despite heavy losses, the Allied troops pushed inland, establishing a foothold on French soil. Reinforcements poured ashore, and the tide of battle began to turn in favor of the Allies. D-Day marked a turning point in the war in Europe, paving the way for the eventual defeat of Nazi Germany. In the summer of 1942, the Wehrmacht launched a major offensive towards Stalingrad. The Battle of Stalingrad became a turning point, a symbol of Soviet resistance. The battle raged for months, a brutal struggle for every street and building. The Luftwaffe's relentless bombardment reduced the city to a wasteland. General Vasily Chuikov's defenders fought with desperate ferocity. The battle became a gruesome war of attrition. Winter intensified the fighting, bleeding the German Sixth Army. In February 1943, the German Sixth Army surrendered. Stalingrad marked the beginning of the end for Hitler's eastern ambitions. While the fate of Europe hung in the balance, a different kind of war was being waged in the Pacific. The Pacific theater witnessed some of the most brutal fighting of World War II. The early months of the war in the Pacific were marked by a series of Japanese victories. However, the tide began to turn in June 1942 at the Battle of Midway. US Navy codebreakers knew that a major Japanese offensive was planned against Midway Island. The Battle of Midway proved to be a decisive turning point in the Pacific War. US Navy dive bombers caught the Japanese fleet by surprise, sinking 4 Japanese aircraft carriers. From then on, the United States adopted a strategy of island hopping, targeting strategically important islands and bringing the war closer to Japan. Amidst the global conflict, a horror of unimaginable scale was unfolding: the Holocaust. Orchestrated by the Nazi regime, the Holocaust stands as a stark reminder of the depths of human depravity. From 1933 to 1945, Nazi Germany systematically persecuted and murdered 6 million Jews across German-occupied Europe. The Holocaust was a genocide, a deliberate attempt to exterminate an entire people. Jews were stripped of their citizenship, herded into ghettos, and subjected to forced labor, starvation, and violence. The Nazis established a network of concentration camps and extermination camps across occupied Europe. At these camps, Jews and other groups deemed undesirable by the Nazis were subjected to unimaginable cruelty. The Holocaust was a crime against humanity, a stain on the conscience of the world. By 1945, the tide of war had turned decisively against Nazi Germany. The Allied armies closed in on Germany from both east and west. In the east, the Red Army advanced relentlessly into the heart of Germany. In the west, the Allied armies crossed the Rhine River and pushed into the industrial heartland of the Third Reich. As the Allied armies closed in on Berlin, Hitler, holed up in his underground bunker, refused to accept the inevitable. On April 30th, 1945, as Soviet troops battled their way into Berlin, Hitler committed suicide in his bunker. On May 7th, 1945, General Alfred Jodl signed the unconditional surrender of all German forces. The war in Europe was over, and the news of Germany's surrender sparked celebrations across the globe. While victory was declared in Europe, the war in the Pacific raged on. The Japanese continued to fight with fanatical determination, refusing to surrender. The US military made the fateful decision to unleash a new and terrible weapon, the atomic bomb. On August 6, 1945, a US B-29 bomber dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima, killing an estimated 80,000 people. 3 days later, on August 9, 1945, the United States dropped a second atomic bomb on Nagasaki, killing an estimated 40,000 people. The atomic bombings had a profound impact on Japan. The Japanese leadership, faced with the prospect of further destruction, made the agonizing decision to surrender. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's unconditional surrender, effectively ending World War II. World War II's consequences were profound, with 70 million lives lost. The world was left scarred, both physically and emotionally. Cities lay in ruins, economies shattered, millions displaced. From the ashes emerged a new world order. The United Nations was formed to prevent future conflicts. The US and Soviet Union's rivalry led to the Cold War. World War II's legacy shapes our world today. Let us strive for a peaceful and just world.